100 hours local time. The gray skies above Greenland shattered with a roar of turbines as the U.S. Navy's Second Fleet elevated to maximum combat readiness. A shocking event was unfolding that defied every strategic prediction made in the last decade. French President Emmanuel Macron, in an uncontrollable diplomatic rage, had ordered France's nuclear carrier Charles de Gaulle to lead a powerful strike group directly into a U.S. military exclusion zone. The objective was clear: use overwhelming force to send an unmistakable message that America's unilateral ambitions to control this Arctic island had crossed a red line Paris would not tolerate. The United States, under President Trump's second term, wasn't going to accept challenges in its strategic backyard. The moment NORAD detected the French fleet, the USS Gerald R. Ford, America's $13 billion supercarrier, went to general quarters and raced to intercept with overwhelming force. Tensions escalated to the breaking point. The world braced for the unthinkable. The first naval confrontation between NATO founding members since 1949. But then, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stepped to the podium with a cryptic statement. "I don't think European soldiers can influence the U.S. president's decision-making process or have any impact on his objective of securing Greenland's future." The statement seemed arrogant, almost recklessly provocative. But immediately after those words, something occurred that even Moscow's general staff never anticipated. Instead of celebrating NATO's fracture, the Russian Northern Fleet issued red alert across its entire theater. Nuclear submarine captains received emergency withdrawal orders. Strategic bombers were grounded. The question that paralyzed intelligence agencies worldwide: why would a U.S.-France civil war cause Russia to panic and order its most valuable assets into emergency retreat? Did Russian satellites detect something more terrifying than a carrier showdown? Or were we all being deceived by the most sophisticated military deception of the 21st century? The truth behind this confrontation is far more bizarre and devastating to Moscow than anyone imagined, and it begins with deadly arrogance from Paris. The Arctic Ocean churned as France's Charles de Gaulle carrier group brazenly entered the Davis Strait with unprecedented aggression. U.S. electronic surveillance noted something troubling. The French fleet made no attempt to conceal its formation. French warships activated PAM's fire control radars at maximum power, continuously scanning U.S. positions along Greenland's coast. Rafale M fighters screamed through frigid air, conducting provocative flybys directly in front of American early warning stations. This was military theater at the highest level. Macron's calculated gamble to force Washington into a humiliating retreat. But what made observers uneasy wasn't just aggression, it was the unusual acoustic behavior. Instead of operating under MCON, emissions control, French warships transmitted wideband radio signals continuously and activated powerful active sonar that pounded the seabed with massive acoustic pulses. To professional strategists, this seemed suicidal, like screaming your position on a battlefield. Conventional doctrine demanded silence, especially where Russian submarines patrolled. But to those lurking beneath the waves, this cacophony represented something different. The perfect acoustic shield masking something far more dangerous than a French carrier. Russia, monitoring from the Northern Fleet headquarters, saw this chaos as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to execute the most audacious penetration operation in naval history, while NATO tore itself apart. Before continuing, let's make a prediction. In this high-stakes confrontation in freezing waters off Greenland, which power will prevail? Will France's bold gambit force American concessions, or will Washington's technological superiority crush European resistance? Drop your prediction in the comments. Washington's response was immediate and ruthless. Caroline Leavitt's statement wasn't diplomatic posturing, it was direct combat authorization to U.S. Northern Command. The Second Fleet deployed an overwhelming encirclement centered on USS Gerald R. Ford. This $13 billion technological marvel immediately launched coordinated electronic warfare that would turn Greenland into an information black hole. From the forward's deck, a squadron of EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft launched simultaneously, each carrying the latest generation ALQ-99 jamming pods. Within seconds, they established a massive jamming screen, completely blanketing French fleet operations. The electromagnetic spectrum across southern Greenland burned white with noise. The U.S. activated noise barrage mode, flooding all frequencies with devastating interference. Satellite uplinks died. Radio became impossible. Radar screens went blank. The Pentagon was converting this Arctic corner into an information void where nothing could be seen or transmitted without American permission. But escalation didn't stop there. Arleigh Burke destroyers charged into the French formation at 30 knots, performing dangerously aggressive intercepts. 5-inch guns rotated continuously, tracking French vessels. The message: one wrong move and this goes kinetic. Tension was suffocating. Sailors manned battle stations with fingers hovering over triggers. But the most chaotic environment was underwater. American and French submarines activated powerful active sonar, creating hellish acoustic conditions. Sound waves bounced off cliffs and icebergs, generating millions of false echoes. This underwater chaos, this perfect acoustic storm, was exactly what Russia's Northern Fleet had been waiting for, the opportunity they'd planned for 2 decades. And now, hidden beneath NATO's conflict, Moscow made its move. Taking advantage of NATO's chaos, Russian Northern Fleet deployed 2 technological marvels, Yasen-M class nuclear submarines Kazan and Novosibirsk. These submarines are dubbed ocean black holes, near-silent pump jet propulsion and advanced coating that absorbs sonar like stealth aircraft absorbs radar. Armed with Zircon hypersonic missiles capable of Mach 9 and striking the U.S. East Coast in under 5 minutes, these represented Russia's ultimate strategic weapon. The plan? Use acoustic chaos from the U.S.-French confrontation as perfect camouflage to slip through the GUK gap and penetrate deep Atlantic undetected. At 1200 hours January 18th, Russian satellites confirmed both submarines moving smoothly, using noise from French carrier operations to mask their pump jet signatures completely. The Kazan's captain, emboldened, ordered speed increased to 20 knots, reckless for stealth submarines, but necessary to exploit the narrow opportunity window. He believed with absolute certainty he was executing the intelligence coup of the century, making NATO look like amateurs on their own turf. But they made one fatal miscalculation. The acoustic chaos they depended on for concealment was actually a carefully composed death symphony written specifically for them. At 1530 hours, the tactical picture shifted so rapidly Russian officers couldn't process it. On link 16, something impossible occurred. French encrypted frequencies suddenly synchronized perfectly with U.S. Navy's NAFA system. In that moment, truth detonated. There had never been civil war. The entire military deployment, every flyby, every maneuver, every emission had been meticulously orchestrated deception with one purpose: lure Russia's Yasen-M submarines out of protective layers into a predetermined kill zone. U.S. and French intelligence concluded months earlier Russia's Yasen-M submarines were so advanced they'd become virtually invisible to conventional detection. To neutralize this threat, NATO needed to force these submarines to move quickly and navigate into geographic corridors where detection was guaranteed. The French fleet's noisy movement wasn't tactical incompetence, it was bait. The acoustic chaos forced Russian submarines deeper, searching desperately for quiet corridors to transit undetected. But these quiet corridors were pre-surveyed death traps, carefully mapped channels where detection was certain. And this is when truth about 15 French soldiers was revealed. Media reported France deployed only 15 specialists, laughably small, but these weren't ordinary infantry. They were France's most elite underwater acoustic warfare specialists, inserted by American helicopters onto ice floes along predicted Russian routes. These operators drilled through Arctic ice and deployed ultra-sensitive passive hydrophones. When Russian submarines accelerated, the faint pump jet sound echoed like thunder in French analysts' headphones. Exact coordinates of both Yasen-M submarines transmitted immediately to Second Fleet operations. The prey walked into the trap.